Welcome to the Father's Heart Freedom Family. This is your host, Tish, on exploring the divine mysteries of God. Enjoy the video.
Welcome to Exploring the Divine Mysteries of God. I am here with such an amazing Son of God, and I know he has a lot to say to us. But I am so grateful for those of you who continue to follow us, to subscribe to our channel, and continue to like what we do. It's because of you that we are doing this. And also today, the gentleman I have here is a young man. And you know, everything we are doing is about the next generation. If we are able to impart the next generation with truth, they will carry that truth into the world and they will change the world. So I believe that the older generation is to equip, to teach, and to train the young ones so they will go forward. And so when I saw this gentleman, Joshua Eternos Bryson, I got so excited. I know I needed to bring him here. And so today I have with me Eternos, Joshua, Bryson. You are welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Joshua, would you be okay if I call you Joshua? Is that okay?
Of course, yeah, it's my name.
Right, okay. Will you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah,
Just
so
a bit of your background.
I'm from London,
Right.
South Croydon, and as you were saying, I'm quite young, but I'm someone who believes in the spirit. And I believe that in order for humanity to truly walk in their purpose, they need to embrace who they are fully. And that's on a spiritual, on a soulish, and on a physical level.
I like that.
So, my purpose or the reason why I do what I do and my dream is to help as many people as possible, regardless of where they come from and their background, grow in their sonship and grow in who they are. But most importantly, my main focus is on the soul and on helping people gain balance and emotional balance over the soul, because that's where a lot of trauma, a lot of issues, and I guess most of the issues that people have tend to reside around the soul. And so that's why I do what I do.
That is truly incredible because we talk about developing the spirit, growing in the spirit, and a lot of things is about the spirit, the spirit, the spirit. Forgetting that it's actually the soul that engages the spirit, and it's the soul that engages us in the physical.
Yeah.
And so, if the soul is fragmented, or if the soul is in trouble, the body cannot function very well and the spirit cannot function very well. So it makes so much sense that you would, bring up the issue of the soul. But how come that has become not your main thing, but your focal point? Like it has become a thing of interest to you. Where did that come from?
Well, growing up, at the very beginning of my life, I wasn't necessarily religious in any way. I was living with my mum, and our biological father left us. What happened was when our stepdad came into our life, and he's such a blessing, we started going to church.
Wow.
And what I noticed growing up in church just over the years was there was this emphasis on the spirit, which is amazing because I used to see people getting healed,
Mm.
and I used to see, deliverance, all of the amazing things that people want to see in the manifestations. But I could never really understand why people who had this spiritual power and who'd be doing these great things would still have all these issues. So, you'd hear about pastors having affairs, or you'd hear about, this person moving in great power, but then there's a character issue. And I guess what I began to realize was that the soul, or the part of the human body that processes information, is key in this world because it literally determines how you live your life. One thing that I love to say is that I've noticed how two people can be in the exact same situation and be going through the same thing. And I've seen two people who are, for example, Christian or of the same spiritual belief, who are powerful, go through the same thing, but yet they respond differently. And when you read through the Bible, it talks about how Yeshua was the Prince of Peace and how we're supposed to have balance, we're supposed to be loving, we're supposed to have peace, joy, all the fruit of the Spirit. All of those things deal with the soul. And I believe that the only reason why today we don't have more people moving in the things that Yeshua did is simply because somewhere in their souls, they don't believe that they themselves can. And because it's the soul that processes information, and the spirit is essentially already perfect because it comes from God. Once we can learn how to manage and cleanse and essentially fix the issues of our soul, as you were saying, the way in which the spirit can then interface and the soul can interface through the physical body becomes a lot more powerful. And that's when we can really see heaven manifest on earth. And so it's sort of just been a gradual process of me realizing, oh, this thing that's neglected is so important. I've met people who are of no sort of spiritual, I don't want to use the word importance, but they don't have the knowledge, or they don't understand how things work spiritually. I've even met people who are Buddhist, who are Muslim, from different backgrounds entirely. And I can always sense when there is a purity or a peace within the soul, and it's something that you can tell it's a presence that's on them, and it's something that can physically be read, which I talk about more when I go into the science of these kind of things. But I just came to realize that we need to master all three parts of ourselves. So it's good to focus on the spirit, but we need to focus on the soul, and we also need to focus on the body.
So if we really want to walk as sons, and this is what I was saying to Father, I say, Father, I understand why when I first started your journey, you took me through so much, so just processing me, my soul, working on my soul constantly. I didn't have too much understanding at the time. But then I started studying, looking into it, reading books and listening to people and going to conferences where the soul was being dealt with. And I came to understand that, in fact, it is so necessary for us to allow the soul to go through crucifixion. Otherwise, we will continue to struggle through even our walk as sons of the living God. And it is awesome that you have taken this role for your generation. And I am sure that a lot is going to come out of it. And so I know you love the scientific side, the historical side, and everything put together. So can you tell us the model you use or why you developed this model to help the human soul and how important it is for the human soul to actually come to the realization that they really need to move out of where we are and step into where we need to be?
Yes. So the process in which I use meditation, and the reason why I use meditation and being still, it wasn't anything intentional. I came across it by accident. Michael Van Vlyman spoke about stillness, so I started reading into him, and I came across all of the teachers, and something that they all had in common was that they all spent time in stillness and meditation. When I started doing this, the first things that I would be shown and taught weren't necessarily spiritual things, but I was being shown about myself. And I began to notice how my behavior and my character started to change. And so I began to notice changes within myself, within my soul, just from spending time in stillness. And so I realized, okay, that means that there must be a way for humans and for us to begin to correct our behavior, begin to deal with our issues, and begin to deal with things specifically in the soul just by being still. And what then sort of ensued from that moment was I started doing a lot of research, but I also have amazing mentors that I learned from. And basically, by applying what they teach as well as what I experience, I began to find that through thought and through feeling, you can truly begin to reprogram the body and how you respond to situations. So I can give an example of the first practice that I did before I knew about any of the science behind any of this. I started doing this when I was in year 9. Prior to me being in year 9, so from year 8 and year 7, which is around 11, 12, 13, I was very boisterous, active, quite a loud person. And I would just say whatever came to my mind. And I wasn't necessarily troublesome, but I wasn't the most well behaved child, you could say. What I started doing was, and there were 2 levels to this. The first thing I decided to do was I would go into school and I would say, okay, today I'm not going to speak to anyone until they speak to me. So if I'm spoken to, I'll then respond. And it seems like such a simple practice, but that's what I started doing. And then the second level up from that was then, okay, I'm not going to speak at all until midday, and then until 2, and then until, say, 3 or 4 p.m., right? Very simple practice. But that changed everything for me. And the reason why is because it then forced me to begin to have to process information more, acknowledge my thoughts more, and acknowledge my emotions more before I could then respond to someone.
Wow.
Previously, someone would say a thing to me or would insult me or whatever. Rather than the response being rapid or me doing something like getting into a fight or whatever, it then put this period of pause literally in between. And what happens is when you repeat something and train your body to do a new thing, which is a science that I learned later on, it then becomes a habit. And so within, I'd say, a few months to about a year, I'd really mellowed. And all of a sudden, I was this really quiet person to the point where my parents thought that something was wrong with me.
Wow.
People were just like, why is this guy so quiet? What's going on? That's then when the peace came in. And by pushing not necessarily myself to the side, but by adding in that filter, it was much easier for me to become sensitive to the Holy Spirit. And so I would start to get more impressions. There were times where my life was in danger and I would receive impressions not to do a thing or to do a thing. So that opens up everything, right? Because oftentimes people who can't necessarily hear the voice of God or struggle to, they say it's because my own thoughts get in the way. When you learn to place a filter there, what happens is there's more times where your mind is still throughout the day. And so you're much more sensitive and receptive to the information that's already living inside of us. So just doing that practice alone, that was kind of the first thing that really made a massive impact. And that's one of the things which I like to encourage and uh, just get people to start doing if they can. The one where you only talk when you're spoken to is much more easier than just not speaking at all. Because sometimes when you don't speak at all, you can be at work and come across as rude. And you don't want to be in a meeting and have someone speak to you and you don't say anything back. But it's just about building in that filter.
Wow, incredible. It's being intentional, isn't it? Being intentional. As you were talking, I'm just thinking, this whole thing is really becoming aware and also being intentional in your decision making, in your choices, and even places that you go, what you see, what you watch. We have to be intentional about that because it's all about being able to assess what heaven is saying and walking in it. Today, I met an 89-year-old woman, a prayer warrior. She said to me, only do what you hear him tell you. That's how I've lived. I'm like, you are 89 and you are walking and you look this young. He said, yes, he gave me youth because I only do what I hear him tell me. And I was just blown away by her beauty and her sincerity. So there's something about being intentional, knowing that you are not of your own, but somebody is working with you and you need to know what they are saying so you can do it. Which the Lord Jesus himself said that's how he lived. So how then can we live without that? But the next question I want to ask before you go into the scientific side of things, which I'm really excited about, is are you still part of a church? Like, do you go into a church still?
Okay, so for me personally, the way my journey has been is that I don't actually go to a church anymore. I used to, so I grew up going to church. What happened was um, I ended up being introduced to healing. So growing up, I always wanted to evangelize or like be an evangelist of some sort.
Mm.
So what happened was, to cut a long story short, there's a man named Torben Sondergaard. He was in prison for a long time, but he's out.
Tobin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Torben, amazing, amazing, amazing man, changed my life. His ministry, right? They made these two movies. I think The Last Reformation is what the
The
film's.
last reformation, yes.
So my brother and my mother saw the film, and my brother said that he felt Holy Spirit telling him, "You need to show Joshua this. You need to show your brother this."
Yeah.
So they showed me the film, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Because in this film, I'm seeing people doing the things that I read about, and I love, superheroes. I love all of those kind of things. So what ended up happening was, whilst he was in jail, one of his leaders came to the UK and came to Nottingham, and my friend messaged me and told me they were there. So we ended up going to their events that are called Kickstarts, and
Yeah.
that's where how to heal and deliver. And so essentially, I remember volunteering to go up on the stage when someone had a sickness, and they taught me how to basically heal using,
Yeah.
energy, power, whatever you want to call it. And that person got healed. That weekend, we then went out, and literally, it was crazy. We were just praying over people and healing them. From that point onwards, I didn't necessarily want to go back to the church that I was in, only because I felt that I'd been there for years and I'd learned so much about the Bible. But when it came to me being able to practically do things,
Yeah.
unlocked for me, and I'd been going every week for years. But yeah, in a weekend, literally in about 10 minutes, I'd been taught how I could impact people. So instead of going to church, what I started doing was I started going to more in-house sort of fellowships, but I
Okay.
started and linking up with people who were also going out on the streets. And
Yeah.
so that's what we would do week in, week out. We would go pray for people, ended up going abroad as well. So we went to do missionary work in like Paris and stuff, just praying for people, in some cases feeding people, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what the Bible talks about in the book of Acts anyway, about us actually being able to go out. And so I do feel like there is a shift coming in terms of how the system is, where more and more people will begin to awaken to the divinity within themselves. I still think that there are parts of church in terms of the community of it, which are important. But there are many things within the structure that stops people from growing and awakening to who they truly are. And so it will take people who are willing to sort of step away and learn and grow to then help people. And so currently, right now, I'm not in a church, but I'm involved in multiple communities, and we all impact the world in different ways. So, yeah.
I just love your heart. The beauty of what Father is doing right now is when you hear everybody's story, they all sound alike. All the stories sound alike. We all love God and we love the church, but something happened that makes you pause and ask, okay, where is this thing going? And soon as you start seeking deeper, you kind of find your way coming out. And I asked because a lot of people think that we are this kind of church. No, we need community. People need community. But what kind of community do we need? Is a community that will grow you into who you really are and walk in that true identity. And from what you are saying, I mean, I asked because as a young person, if you are in an environment where you are restricted from moving in this, it will affect you. It will suppress it, or you will ignore it. I followed Tobin for a long time. When he first came to England, he came to Ireland, and I went to Ireland to be with them for 3 days. I trained in Kickstart. I'm actually still part of their, you know how they map you on the I'm still, and we've had meetings in my house here. We've been on the streets. They came from all over. And we did all that. And it was, I introduced my children to it as well. I brought other people in. It opens up the possibilities to you. You begin to see that actually, me as a person, I have what it takes to go out there and do what has to be done.
Yeah.
And what you need around you is a community of people, like-minded people who will help you grow. But one thing this old elderly woman said to me again is that she said, "You are the temple, and keep the temple. Know that you are the temple, and keep the temple well." And that's what she's done all her life. So keeping the temple well is not just the body. Or because I looked at her, I said, "Mom, look at you. Her nails are well polished." I'm like, "Mom, really? Look at you at 89." She said, "Yes, this is the temple. You keep the temple well." So what she's saying is that you as a person. So I asked her, I said, "Do you go to church?" She said, "No, I'm the church. Love, I am the church. I've been the church for years." So she took me to her house and showed me her home and her prayer room. And she said, "This is where, this is the, and it's a tiny," she said, "This is the biggest room in the whole house because this is the meeting place of heaven and earth." And I just fell in love with her. Now, coming to that understanding, knowing that you carry all that you need in you, within you, you cherish it. You have that understanding, you move with it. It changes everything for us. And we are not saying church isn't good. There are people who surely need to be church. And the church brought us up, it trained us in a lot of things. But I'm specifically asking this because of how young you are. And how many young people will be imparted if they actually know that they themselves have they embody Christ and can move out and be who they are called to be. Be connected to community, but it has to be a community that can help you grow in the things of really help you grow as a person, not through performance or pleasing someone, but as a person.
It's
And I know
very,
you agree with me.
yeah. And something that I believe in is if you want to get better at a thing or learn something, just find someone who's better at it than you and just learn from them. And that kind of idea has taken me from community to community to community.
Mm,
But young people, something that I noticed is a lot of them grow up and in the traditional church setting, and I'm not talking about every single church, but the majority, they get bored, you know. Um, but as soon as you start telling children or kids that they can be superheroes and that they do have powers and that they can actually be connected directly to God, it's like their hearts open. And it's the reason why what we're seeing in the world today is a lot of young people, even people that I know that I've grown up with, they start opening up to spirituality. Sometimes it can lead them into things of darkness, but they have a heart for deeper spiritual things
mm,
and they just don't know how to correctly access them. And so it will take people being able to show them and show people that, yes, that desire you have in your heart is correct, but here's the right way to do it. You know, here's the way to make sure that you're doing things the right way and that you're growing in who you're supposed to be. You know, because a lot of people they get hurt by the institution, and the mistake they make is that they then turn their back on God, not realizing that that's the institution and that is not who God is.
yeah,
Those are people. And a lot of people aren't perfect. They're all on their journeys and they will get there. God sees them as perfect either way, but that's a journey of development that they're on.
yeah,
When you then begin to blame God for the actions and faults of man, it can really then mess you up. And so yeah, I just feel like it's important for people to realize that, as the woman said, you are the temple. Your body, your soul, and your spirit is designed to literally be an access point or an altar between heaven and earth.
that's it.
You are the point. And once you learn to tune into yourself and understand how you work, you can literally be a walking kingdom yourself where people interact with you. When they interact with you, they interact with God, because that's what an altar is. And so,
Wow. I do sessions on people who may have identity crisis or may have issues in their bloodline or maybe dealing with traumas and unforgiveness and things like that. And when I work with young people, it really excites me because they know so much.
mm,
Young people know so much, and yet they are quiet about it because it's a bit like they don't trust adults to listen or hear them out. And it's a bit sad because some of these young people actually are brought to me by their parents. And when I say to them, your child is deeper than you think, they know God. Young people, lots of young people know God because they are looking for something more.
mm,
They are looking, and if they don't get it, they will end up going to places where they will get hurt
yeah,
because these things are available everywhere for them to tap into. And so, if we don't create the opportunities for them to find us and help the right people to mentor them and guide them, they will end up getting hurt before. The good news I tell people is that Christ will find you wherever you are. He will follow you. He will follow you and he will find you. But the earlier we engage, the better. Tell me about the spiritual side of things and then the soul and then the impact on the body and how important that is for you.
yeah. So it's funny. I When I was doing the stillness, I built it up as a practice, the meditation. I did this during sixth form. And I think I mentioned earlier that I would start to experience things. And there have been a few things I've been taught, or many things over the years. I haven't known if I quite write things down. But there was this one specific day that I still remember, and it's a staple mark for me because it confused me, but it opened up the doors for everything. So I'm in my room in secondary school, or no, sixth form, sorry, because I boarded at my sixth form for 2 years. So what I used to do is I used to wake up and I would go into stillness and just meditate for about an hour. And I remember, right, Father took me into space and he showed me myself, as in my body, but my body was clear, like translucent. And you know how in space you can see all the stars and the planets, right? I saw them all within myself, but I was one with them. So it was
Wow.
really like I was moving through and I was standing there, but there was no me, there was just everything, right? And so I came back and I realized, and I knew within myself, okay, that means that there is no separation, one between me and God, two between me and other humans, and three between me and everything in space and time. Now, I was, I would say, scared, right? Because I'd spoken about a previous translation experience in my church, and uh, the response was positive from some people, but from others, you can just feel when things are a bit off. So I knew this, but I was like, how am I supposed to even begin to explain this? But I know it's the truth. Like there was another time, for example, where I was taken into a similar space and I heard God tell me that if you want to learn how to translate to a place and get physically taken there, you have to love the place. And then like years later, one of my mentors confirmed this and all this stuff. So there's information that I've been given, but I didn't know, and the science behind it, right? What happened was, I think the first person I came across talking about the science was Justin Paul Abrahams.
Yes.
Amazing, amazing. One of my mentors, I love him. And he started talking about heart connection and the quantum. And so I started looking in and I came across people like Dr. Joe Dispenza. And what I discovered was that there are scientists out here in the world who literally, even from Einstein back in the days,
Exactly.
these things, and they would speak about these things, Nikola Tesla, they would
Oh,
speak.
I was reading about Tesla and I'm like, oh my goodness, this people knew something they couldn't share with the world.
Yeah, like if what was it? He said, if you want to understand the world, you need to think in terms of frequency and vibration. I think it was. he came, and I was like, So I remember, because I studied physics in sixth form, and they taught us about this thing called wave particle duality, which is essentially the idea or the notion that we have atoms, and like we see a wall here, for example, but the only reason why this wall is a wall is because we choose to see it that way. So when
Well,
we're looking at the wall is essentially just waves, and it has unlimited potential to become anything. And so essentially, what I figured was that we shape the world around us,
great.
right? I then remembered that I was taught that I think they said that 99% of an atom is empty space, right? Upon further research, I then realized that it's not that it's empty, it's just that it contains a type of energy that is from a parallel world, or they call it quantum, etc., etc. And there's a complete field full of that energy. And if you can tune into that field, you can then begin to shape and create.
Wow.
We're also made of those same atoms as are in this bottle, as are in this table. So essentially, we are one with everything. So I was like, okay, so that's what God was showing me. On a scientific level, there really is no separation between me and the world around me. And so from that moment, I then realized, okay, so I used to think that all atheists or people who didn't believe in God were scientists. But then when you start studying the scientists, you begin to realize, hold on, no, these people did believe in God. And then the ones who claim they didn't believe in God, when you actually read their work, you begin to understand they probably did, but just hated him, or so they didn't want other people to. That's what came out for me.
They didn't want to acknowledge him. They
No,
don't
it,
take the credit for themselves.
yeah, just it's interesting, and it also excites me because I now understand that everything in creation has God's mark on it,
Yeah.
and it also helps me gain the understanding that when God created man, and we read in Genesis, right, we're supposed to multiply, have dominion, till the land. But when two parents create a child, and this is just the general blueprint, the child is what the parents are. The nature of the parents are passed down to the child, be it through genes, etc. So when God created man and said, let us make man in our image, and then separated man into woman, on the most basic fundamental level, the nature of God being that creative nature was then placed in us. And so, us being on earth, it's our job to essentially create, right? But we see creation as maybe career, or, for some people who are creative, it can be art. But God literally created worlds and created beings. And so, why can't we shift this physical world as we see it? Why can't we bend the rules of physics that we've put ourselves under when we have the same divine nature? We read that Yeshua was walking on water, that people were being translocated. There's a science behind everything. And the more we understand it, the more we're able to walk in. And so, yeah, I'm just excited for this.
So, so you embrace this science, which is more of quantum entanglement, quantum mechanics, quantum whatever. And that's where we are. There is no empty space anywhere. There is no empty space. There is always a connection. And I like what you said, that it is the mind that sees the wall as a wall. The mind created this as wall.
Yeah,
Um, I remember I was working with a young person, and her eyes were open, and she said, Auntie Tish, there are no walls. There are angels everywhere, but there are no walls. We are just seated here. There are no walls. I said, yeah, there are no walls. They don't see this. We created this and we put this up. So there are no walls. So we limit ourselves by the way we see things and the way we perceive things. So how is this connected to your program, the soul program?
right. So, in the same way you create things in the physical world, in terms of, because we believe this is a wall, we do the same things with our bodies. And I like to call it self sabotage, where we've been told or conditioned growing up that the world works a certain way and we program our bodies to behave in a certain way. It's the same thing with certain sickness and certain disease, right? What happens is when you create patterns within your body and you expect them to essentially occur in a certain way, that's what happens. But it's not necessarily the physical body that's the issue, it's the soul, because the soul is what processes information. The body responds to the soul. This is where the science kind of gets into it because it all has to do with emotion. You know, everyone's felt that feeling, for example, when they get into a situation and they start to feel fear, they feel this thing in their stomach, and, you know, adrenaline is released and cortisol is released, and all these things get released. And that has an effect on the body. And what people don't realize is every emotion that you feel has an effect on the body.
It does.
But emotions are triggered by thought, and thoughts are supposedly immaterial. So what happens is the immaterial thought creates a chemical response in the body. And so that means that we are able to basically transmute something that's immaterial and create it within ourselves. The brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what isn't. And so if you think a thought in your brain, the body or the mind, because it doesn't know the difference, will still respond to it, which is why you can think of a situation that you've been in where you felt fear. You don't have to be in that situation. You can just think about it. And those chemical messengers will then run down your body and the body will respond in the same way. So what that means is your thoughts literally create your life. And people have been saying this for years, but it gets passed off as new age nonsense, or the term they like to use is woo-woo, right? But science has literally proven this. And so when it comes to healing the physical body through the soul, if you can learn to see things in your mind in a positive way, and earlier when I spoke about not speaking, what you do is you create a filter in between. So let's say someone offends you. If you process that straight away, the way that you've been training yourself to, you'll go straight to anger. Anger is the first response, and that affects your body.
Yeah.
Like driving, the more you go down a certain path, you create what's known as a mind or a sequence of neural pathways that the body then responds to. It's like a feedback loop where it's someone offends me, I respond this way and I do it instantly. The more you do it, the more you program your body, right? So what's happening is people will get offended by things and they go straight to anger, straight to anger, straight to anger, which deteriorates the body, or straight to fear, straight to fear. Let's say you have a traumatic experience. Now, as a child, the more emotion that you feel and experience determines how imprinted it is in your memory. The strongest memories that you have from your childhood are the memories that emotionally impacted you the most, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah.
So you have an extremely traumatic experience as a child where you experience a lot of fear. Those chemicals that were released, all of that stuff that happened in your body is attached to that. Every time you think about that moment, those same chemicals get released, right? Now, adrenaline and cortisol are great when you need to run away from someone or when you need to fight. The issue is that those feelings of fear are now getting triggered on a daily basis for things that aren't actually that deep. For example, some people get immense fear when they see their boss, when they get a text message from someone, etc., etc. And by constantly going through that feedback loop, they are basically damaging themselves. So what I'm looking to teach and help people do is to simply learn how to disconnect from that and begin to reprogram the mind to respond to things in a different way. Because if you can then engage love, if you can then engage joy, gratitude, right? What that does is that then will reprogram the body to respond to things in a completely different way. And so the person who you are today can be insulted by someone and feel anger. But in, say, 6 months from now, you can be insulted and your default is love. At the beginning, it will take some work because you've been used to responding in that certain way. But if you push through and get past a certain point, you program a new feedback loop where that then becomes automatic. And I was having this conversation with my brother because he said to me, Joshua, you're always relaxed now, you're always chill. But I remember when you were young, you used to be so angry, like you had anger issues. And he's 5 years older than me, so he would tell me, like, you don't understand, you used to crash out. That's the term that we use, crash out.
Yeah.
But he says now you're all right. And I realized it's because what I did was I spent time just reprogramming myself. And it's a choice, right? Now, the best way to do it for people wondering is you want to be working on these things outside of the situations, right? So the best time to work on these things isn't necessarily when someone is offending you, because your body will want to default. But if you can take time out every day to begin to see a situation and see a different outcome in it. So you can imagine someone coming up to you and seeing them insult you, and you can see yourself responding differently. If you keep replaying that, because your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's fake, that then becomes a new feedback loop. And if you do it enough, what happens is, as you begin to think, you begin to feel. As a man thinks in his heart, so it is, right? There's a linkage that happens, and then that becomes the new reality. So then what happens is more and more and more, you program that, you see it, you feel it. The next time someone then comes to insult you, even if it isn't an automatic response, you then realize, wait, I have the option because I've seen this before. So now I don't have to respond the way I was responding before. Let me respond this way. And then it becomes automatic. And that's how you then reach what I like to call eternal bliss, which is the state where no matter what happens around you, your response and your interior environment is always stronger than the external.
Wow.
And that you begin to shape the world rather than the world shaping you. And that's the state that I believe that every son of God, every child of God, however you want to see it, should be in. That's the state where no matter who you have around you, no matter where you go, you bring heaven with you, because you're clear, you're clean, you're carrying the fruit of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit sees you as a clean vessel. And so you can receive instruction and your emotions won't get in the way. Let's say, for example, now this doesn't have to do with feeling, this has to do with belief. You may have a belief, right? Let's say you dislike women or you see women as inferior, which is something that a lot of people do for some reason. The Holy Spirit may tell you to approach a woman and to tell her this, or to pray over her, or to do this. You receive the message, let's say loud and clear, you know what you're supposed to do, but you have that internal issue where you dislike women, right? At most, you may go and approach her, but you may not relay the full message. And this is something that my mentor taught me, where he explained that filters in the soul are dangerous, because God could be trying to use you to impact someone's life, but because you don't agree with them on this certain thing, it pushes you off. And so in the same way it works for emotions, it can also work for beliefs. But it's just about clearing yourself, aligning yourself with the heavenly view, so that nothing internally pushes or throws you off. You look at Yeshua, I believe it's when they're going to stone the woman for prostitution, right? In that modern day society, the general belief from the times of Moses was, if a woman is caught in adultery, you stone. That's law. And so that's what they all believed, right? Yeshua said, do what I see the Father do. So he's connected to the kingdom directly. His response is different to everyone's around him. He must look crazy to everyone around him, but because he's in line, his soul is clear, he's connected to heaven, his response reflects that of God's. Wow. And that's what we're looking to achieve within people. The ability to stay connected, to stay clean, stay clear, so that you can positively impact whoever that may be. And it doesn't have to be on a global scale. For some people, it will be in the workplace. For some people, it will be in their households. Everyone is called to a different area. What matters is that they are impacted.
That's amazing. The most important thing is that your temple is clean. What is the scientific, because you are talking about the soul, what is the scientific essence? How does science, the body, the soul, the body come into play together in this?
Into specifically responding to situations.
Responding to situations through the soul.
Okay.
Reacting, yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to the soul, the role of the soul is as I've said before, to process information. So your emotions and everything is compact into it. Now, this, what I'm about to explain, can be quite scary to some people, but it shouldn't, because it's anatomy, okay? So the soul itself has different pools of energy, let's just call them, known as centers. In some cultures, they're known as chakras, which means spinning wheels, but that can be quite a scary notion to some people. So, and these have all been proven scientifically and they can be measured, right? What happens is the way the soul is designed is the centers work from top to bottom, and they're each associated with a different part of the body and a different emotion. When everything is in balance, what happens is you respond to situations in a neutral way. And so that filter is there. There isn't that sort of urge, because some people, they have an urge to be angry or an urge for fear, etc., etc. Right? When you learn to balance out the energy within your soul and within these energy centers, it deals with that. When there's an imbalance, for example, let's say the root is imbalanced, there's a lot more aggression, there's a lot more of a survival instinct, which means that you get into a situation and within the soul, that's the first thing that comes out. It's the aggression. Now, what happens is it goes from the root to the crown. The crown has to do with your divinity, right? So you know that you're a son, you're a child, and you're connected to the heavens.
Yes.
That you have the eye. People call it the third eye, but it's the first eye because it's the first thing that develops within the womb when you're a child and you see through it. That has to do with your perception. Then you have the throat, which has to do with speaking and just expression in general. Then the heart, and then it works down to the solar plexus, the gut, etc., etc. Now, the heart upwards generally are positive, right? So within, they'll have a positive and a negative nature, but from the heart up, if the majority of the energy is placed anywhere there, you'll still respond positively. So I like to tell people you don't have to be perfect, right? So it's not that everything necessarily has to be in balance. Yes, that is ideal. But even if, say, it's the heart that you have figured out, or it's the crown that you have figured out, more often than not, you respond in the right way. The heart has to do with love. If you have an abundance of energy in the heart within your soul, no matter how someone tries to offend you, no matter how someone comes to cause you harm or distress, the only thing that you'll feel is the love, right? And you know, when people talk about being whacked in the spirit and they just feel the love and there's the love burst, this is partially where it comes from, because it's the heart, and the heart being the majority of the energy that functions. So rather than there being survival, there's love. And so you'll hear stories of people, like I heard a story of someone, I believe they were being held at gunpoint. And for some people, because I know a few people that this has happened to, their response is, I need to survive, I must fight. And that's because in their soul, that's the energy that's predominant, fight, survival. But I've heard of someone who literally preached the gospel to them and just told them how much they love them, because that's what they felt in that moment. And it's because of how the soul is and the balance of that energy. And that person ended up giving their life and turning things around. And so when you talk about the actual science of it, it has to do with those energy centers. And so what I want to do is I want to help people become aware of the energy centers, because for quite a while, since Rockefeller came in, the energy centers have been viewed as a demonic thing. But essentially what people don't realize is he came in, set up the school systems, but also worked with senior bishops in the church to remove other technology and things that are biblical and that are in heaven, but they don't want people to know about, right? And so for the longest time, the energy centers are seen as demonic. Other things like technology within crystals and stuff are seen as demonic as well. But when we begin to understand how energy actually works within the soul, that's how that balance then comes. And so what I plan to do is on my YouTube channel, I plan to make more videos talking about these energy centers, how they work, the historical evidence behind them, because they're not just found in one culture. Some people associate them with the Hindu culture, but they're found all across the world, across all of the different cultures, because their anatomy. You can't choose whether you have them or not. You do. You just need to choose whether you want to work with them or not. And so that's sort of like a brief summary of how that works. But I want to really help bring awareness to it so that people can begin to actually experience that balance.
So spiritually, we have the energy centers that are in our physical body, and it takes the soul to actually activate them.
So the energy centers themselves are in the soul. They're not in the spirit.
Yeah, in
They
the soul.
soul, and they are mirrored with parts of the body.
Right.
For example, we have the pineal gland in the body, and that is linked to the first eye that the soul has. And so when they're all in balance, what happens is your soul and your body basically become like this. And so there were ancient cultures throughout the world who didn't know about the spirit, but they knew about the soul and the body. And so what they were able to do is they were able to transfer across both very swiftly. Have you seen the movie Thor?
Thor.
Thor, like the superhero Thor with the hammer?
Yeah, yeah. My one of my favorites.
Yeah, so that's Norse mythology. You see how when Thor travels and he throws his hammer, there's that rainbow bridge in
Yeah.
Asgard. That actually has to do with the body and what they were masters of doing. That particular ancient civilization was they were masters of that energy system. And when you master it, what happens is you're able to travel spiritually by crossing over and coming back. So that's where that symbolism actually comes from. Well, my mentor, he loves, his name's Nelson Castile. You can check him out, but he loves ancient civilizations and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Amazing. Wow, it's so exciting to hear a young person talk like this. I'm just really, really, really excited for you and for the next generation because this is what we've been told. This is the crossing, this is the transition in which we are, where we are to start um, operating as sons, which is the translocation and being able to move through walls and being able to move without the restrictions and limitations of the body and all that is where we are entering now. And I know we are in a transition, and so there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of misunderstanding around what is going on, but it's good you have taken your time to actually explain. I see the way you do it step by step, and I think it is going to help a lot of people. So I will encourage those who are listening and watching to look for Joshua Eternos Bryson and subscribe to his channel and go through what he's saying. If it doesn't resonate with you, it's fine. It's okay. Sometimes it takes a lot of what do you call it? Mindset shifts. There must be a lot of mindset shift for you to begin to embrace some of these things that we are talking about. Exploring the divine mysteries. There are mysteries that are not necessarily hidden. We just didn't have understanding to them. And we ignored a lot of them, or we associated them with certain things that may not necessarily be. And as you study the Bible closely, you realize that almost everything is there. We just choose and pick what we need to use. But in sonship, we are being called to be like Christ, to walk in the fullness of who Christ is. So this is beginning to open up a lot, and it's been happening for some time now. So no one is late. If you are now hearing about this, what is your YouTube channel?
So it's Eternos Bryson. It's literally my name.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
Eternos Bryson. Yes. And I will encourage young people to actually engage you and learn more about these things because some of them are actually practicing
Mm.
meditation with the chakras, and they are going to yoga, they are going to things. A lot of young people are practicing these things without the right guidance.
Mm.
And so it's really good that you are bringing it up. Is there anything else you want to add to it? And I think I will have to interview you again so we can go deeper with what you do.
I just wanted to say that for anyone who wants to get into meditation, and this is for anyone at all, even those who are specifically Christian, and if you believe that it is demonic, I have a ebook that I've written. It's free. On my YouTube channel, there's a link for Discord. It's basically where I have my community. But on there, if you go into the Discord and go into the free resources section, there's an ebook called The Path to Peace. The audiobook for it is also on my YouTube channel. But what it does is it goes through the history of meditation, and I provide a large bank of scriptures that show that all the people you read about in the Bible were meditating and how they were doing it. I've also provided scientific benefits, emotional benefits, spiritual benefits, and it's all been backed by science. So if you'd like to have a look at that, feel free. And the only other thing I'd like to say is just, enjoy life. you know, we're all designed to grow and develop, and everyone will grow and develop at their own pace. So it's important just to give people grace and to be as loving as you can. But yeah, that's all. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming. I have really enjoyed um, being with you, chatting with you, and I think we should do this again so you can go a bit deeper into this is just an introduction. I would love you to go deeper into how you do it. So
Yeah,
people, I love the how because it is the only way we can grow. So
yeah,
people can actually learn from you what you do and how you do it. But probably if you want to know more, just like he said, his name is Joshua Eternos Bryson. You can find him on YouTube. That's how I found him. And I got really excited. So I hope you will also get excited. Thank you all for coming. And thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. And I thank you. And I pray that the Father will continue to pour himself into you and enlarge you, that you will do much more for your generation than you are even doing now. May God bless you for choosing to walk in this path. God bless you. Thank you so much for coming.
thank you.